Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. Last week, my mom and I were driving through a familiar stretch of our neighborhood on our usual trip to the local shops. As we turned a corner, I noticed thick black smoke billowing into the sky up ahead. Curious and concerned, my mom took a detour down a side street to find the source. That's when we saw it, a two-story house ablaze. Bright red flames poured from the roof and top-story window, cutting through the smoke. There were no firefighters on the scene yet. From our very clear vantage point, we could see the neighbor in the adjacent single-story home stepping outside, clearly alarmed, and I noted that there was a large gap between the two homes. The flames would have had to leap an improbable distance to reach the smaller house, and it was not a windy day. We made sure emergency services were on their way, and as we drove off, we heard sirens approaching. Later that night, the news ran a segment about the fire. But what caught us off guard was the report. It claimed the single-story house had been completely destroyed, with no mention of the two-story home. According to the report, only one house had burned, and it wasn't the one we saw engulfed in flames. Yesterday, while driving to the shops again, we decided to pass by the site ourselves. What we saw left us stunned. The single-story home was a charred, gutted shell, just as the news had reported. But the two-story house was perfectly intact. The roof untouched. The windows that had flames spewing out of them merely days before still had their blinds drawn neatly behind the glass. Story 2. I've been lurking here for years, reading your weird time slip and everything is off stories, always thinking, wow, that'd be freaky, but probably just a dream or something. I never thought I'd have something worth posting here. And yet, here I am, completely rattled. This happened last week, and I've been trying to make sense of it ever since. My boyfriend thinks I misremembered, and my friends are like, you probably just had déjà vu, but this was different. This wasn't a feeling. This was a full-on repetition of an entire morning. Same words, same events, same thunderstorm. I don't know how else to explain it. I feel like I lived the same few hours twice, and no one else remembers the first time. Let me break it down. My boyfriend, let's call him Matt, and I live together in a small apartment in a mid-sized city. We've been together for 2 years, and while things aren't always perfect, our routine is pretty stable. We both work remote jobs, so mornings are usually chill, coffee, a quick breakfast, and then we settle into our separate corners to work. So last Tuesday we woke up a little later than usual. It was storming hard. Thick rain on the windows, thunder rumbling every few minutes. The kind of storm you feel in your chest. I remember stretching and Matt pulling me close, mumbling about how the rain made him want to stay in bed all day. We ended up fooling around a bit, laughing and kissing under the covers like horny teenagers. It was nice. Familiar. He made a joke about the thunder being applause, and I actually laughed out loud. Then we got up, made coffee, and watched the rain from the kitchen window for a while. He even took a photo of the lightning and posted it on his Instagram story. I remember that clearly because I teased him about using the same filter every time. Around 10:30 a.m., the rain started to slow down, and we both got to work. I had a few Zoom calls, and he was doing back-end dev stuff on his laptop. Normal day. Nothing weird. Until the next morning. Wednesday. I woke up to the sound of thunder. I felt Matt's arm around me. The same stretch. The same sleepy mumbling. God, this rain makes me want to stay in bed all day, he said. That's when my heart dropped. He said it exactly the same way he did the day before. Same inflection. Same sleepy tone. I rolled over and looked at the clock. 8:17 a.m., same time as before. I sat up and said, didn't it storm yesterday? He blinked at me like I was nuts. No, it's been dry all week, he said, rubbing his eyes. Why? I stared at him. You sure? I swear I remember this exact storm. He just laughed. Must have been a dream. Okay, maybe. I tried to shake it off. But then the rest of the morning played out exactly the same. Same kisses. Same joke about thunder being applause, before I could say anything. Same coffee routine. Same lightning photo, same caption, posted to his story. I checked. I had just viewed that yesterday, didn't I? I scrolled through his Instagram. No post from Tuesday. Nothing. It had only just gone up. But I know I saw it the day before. I even remember the comment I left on it. Nice filter, storm chaser smirking face. I looked again. No comment from me. No comment at all. At this point, I started feeling lightheaded. Like I was watching a movie I'd already seen but couldn't fast forward through. I tried to catch him in something, anything, that would be different. I asked him what he wanted for lunch, hoping he'd say something new. He said, "Maybe that leftover pasta?" Same answer as before. Same everything. I didn't mention it again. The only small difference I noticed, barely, was that the storm lasted maybe 10 minutes longer than it had the day before. But the rest? Identical. And no one else seemed to notice. I even texted my friend Katie. "Didn't it storm yesterday?" She replied, "No. It's the first decent rain we've had in weeks." I checked my photos, my texts, my calendar. Nothing to prove that Tuesday had already happened. It was like it got wiped. Or overwritten. The most disturbing part? I found a note I had written to myself on my phone from Tuesday afternoon. It was just one line. "Don't say anything to him when it happens again." I don't remember writing it. The timestamp says 3:12 p.m. on Tuesday. But I didn't check my notes app until after the repeat morning. It's just there. What the hell happened? Was I stuck in a loop? Did time actually reset? Was it some kind of mental glitch on my end? I don't have any history of seizures or dissociation. I wasn't drinking. I don't use any drugs. I wasn't especially sleep deprived. I don't want to believe in this kind of thing, but I literally lived the same morning twice. And now, I can't stop wondering, what if this happens more than we realize? What if we forget when it resets? What if I'm not supposed to notice? Story 3. I'm not sure if this was a glitch or something else, but here's what happened. This happened when I was in college. I was riding my bicycle home from work. The turn up to my apartment complex was kind of tricky. To give you a mental image of this, I'll try and describe the scene. The turn is on a downhill slope on the main road, with the side road up to the apartment heading uphill to the right, so it's fairly sharp. Anywho, it had been raining not long before, so the road was still a little damp. I had crested the hill on the main road and was heading downhill, leaned into the turn to the right going uphill when the bike tires lost traction. The bike flew out from under me, and I found myself in a nosedive heading straight at the curb headfirst. The only thing I had time to think was, "OF." The next instant, I was crouched on the sidewalk roughly 6 feet away watching my bike impact the curb. I was stationary, just crouched down on my feet. I was completely unhurt, without a mark or scuff on me. I still have no logical explanation of how I went from a nosedive inches from my face impacting the curb to crouched 6 feet away from where I was the instant before watching my bike hit the sidewalk. It took me a few minutes to get myself together, and will my bike the rest of the way to the apartment. It was no longer rideable due to a bent rim. Story 4. I don't know what the hell happened last night, or if this is the right sub, but I just want to tell someone about it other than my roommates. Maybe for some of you it's nothing too crazy, but let's begin. Last night I went to the kitchen to get something to drink and turned on the lights. I immediately saw an enormous amount of tiny flies literally swarming in the ceiling corners. They're just tiny flies. In Polish we call them meski. I don't know their English name. I live in a big city, so it was a heck of a shock to me to see that many flies in one place, and we don't have any kind of a bug problem. Bugs are disgusting to me, so it definitely wasn't the most pleasant experience. Maybe that's why it's running through my mind so much. I got my water, and I came back to my room as fast as I could. I remember spilling some water on my bed. Remember that? I fell asleep trying not to think too much about it. When I woke up in the morning, the first thing I did was to get up and check the kitchen. That's where it got even weirder. There was nothing there. No dead flies on the counter. Or the floor. They just disappeared. I told my roommates about it, and they just told me that it was probably a weird nightmare. Then I remembered about the water I spilled. I went to my room, and the stain on my bed was still there, so it certainly wasn't my imagination. And now I'm confused. I know bugs are normal. I know they exist, but there was an actually gigantic amount of them. Tonight, absolutely no bugs. So I have 3 theories, kinda. The first one is that it was just me being tired and seeing stuff. The second one is some kind of nightmare that merged 2 realities. And the third one is that a whole-ass army of flies flew into my apartment at night and just vanished before the morning. And yeah, they could have just flown in and out. But I don't know about that. It's just totally counterintuitive for creatures with such little brain power to do that in one big battalion without leaving any of them behind, haha. Maybe it isn't that crazy, but you don't see things like that every day in a city like Warsaw. So yeah, maybe some of you won't understand my mindfuck, but still, I wanted to share this because as I said earlier, for me it's super weird. One funny thing I just remembered. Before falling asleep, I actually looked up disinfestation costs and available appointment dates. Yeah, I was worried I had AF in bug nest in my kitchen, haha. Any ideas of what could have happened? Story 5. I've often joked about a glitch in the Matrix as a fun way to explain weird but ultimately logical events. But yesterday, I experienced what I can only describe as a real glitch in the Matrix. I need to share this because my brain keeps trying to stabilize it, trying to find some rational explanation. And honestly, if I wasn't so clear-eyed and had such a photogenic memory of the event, I might have already chalked it up to cognitive dissonance and dismissed it. So here's what happened. Nothing dramatic, but very strange. I walked into the house, said hi to my mother, and waved with my left hand. In that hand, I was holding an unopened green Heineken can and a black can of body spray. I remember this clearly. I even made a mental note of it, wondering if she'd comment on the beer since I was just visiting. I figured she definitely saw the green color of the can. Oh well. Anyway, I went straight upstairs to the penthouse room, where there's a single glossy white table. I placed both cans on the table, locked the door with the bolt, not the key, and went to take a shower. After the shower, I went to grab the Heineken to put it in the fridge. But it was gone. Gone. I froze. There were only 2 people in the house. Me and my mother, and I had bolted the door. She wouldn't have come upstairs anyway. The stairs are hard for her due to her age. No one else was home. And yet, the very obvious, bright green can was not on the white table. You couldn't miss it. I searched. It just wasn't there. Feeling exasperated, I went downstairs to hang out and chat with my mother. This time, I locked the penthouse with a key just out of habit. About an hour later, I went back upstairs. And there it was. The same gleaming green can, sitting exactly where I left it. My brain keeps trying to resolve it as some kind of memory glitch, but I know what I saw. I know it wasn't there, and then suddenly it was. No glitch on my part. Just the Matrix. Story 6. I don't know if this is a time slip, a memory issue, or something else entirely, but it's messing with my head. Some details are NSFW-ish, but I'll keep it tasteful. I'm not here to be graphic, just honest. This happened about a month ago, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. I, 29F, have been dating my boyfriend, 31M, for close to a year now. We're both pretty grounded, rational people. I'm a teacher, he's an engineer. We're not into anything weird, not into drugs, don't drink much beyond the occasional wine night at home. We're affectionate though. Physical chemistry has always been part of our relationship. So one Saturday night we stayed in. Nothing special, just a pasta dinner, a little wine, and some cuddling on the couch. Around 9 p.m., we started getting handsy. The usual teasing, slow kisses, that sort of thing. We weren't in a rush. It was one of those lazy, warm evenings where everything feels soft and unhurried. I remember looking at the clock on the microwave when I stood up to grab more wine. It said 9:17 p.m. I even remember thinking, still early. I poured us each a little more, brought the glasses back, and we moved to the bedroom. Things progressed from there, clothes coming off, laughing quietly, hands exploring. It wasn't fast or wild, just intimate. Here's where it gets weird. At some point, we were both lying on the bed, half undressed. He had paused to ask if I wanted to keep going, and I'd said something like, just a little longer like this. We were kissing, and then, I blinked. That's the best way I can describe it. I blinked, and suddenly everything shifted. The lights were the same, the music was still playing softly from the speaker, but the atmosphere felt off. We were still lying there, in roughly the same position, but now we were both fully naked under the covers. Not touching, just staring at the ceiling. Quiet. I sat up and instinctively looked over at the digital clock on the nightstand. 10:42 p.m. I immediately said, "Wait, what time is it?" He looked too. Then he frowned and said, "That can't be right." I told him the last time I remembered checking was just after 9:15. He said he remembered the same. We both tried to piece it together. Did we fall asleep? No. We didn't feel groggy. We hadn't even gotten that far yet. And if we had finished and passed out, why did it feel like we were mid-moment 1 second, and then suddenly, not? Neither of us felt satisfied, sweaty, or even sleepy. It didn't feel like post-fun time haze. It felt like skipping forward, like someone hit fast forward or spliced out a reel of film from our evening. We both laughed it off at first. Maybe we zoned out or got caught up in the moment more than we thought. But it didn't sit right. I mean, over an hour? And neither of us remembers a single thing? I started checking around. The wine glasses were still on the nightstand, untouched. The playlist was still looping the same lo-fi song it had been playing when we entered the bedroom. I checked the Spotify history later. It was the same 3 tracks the whole time. No change. I got this eerie feeling in the pit of my stomach. I checked my phone, wondering if I'd somehow recorded anything or sent a message. Nothing. But here's the kicker. I have a habit of setting Do Not Disturb mode on my phone at 10 p.m. every night. That night, it was never triggered. My phone logs show it should have turned on at 10, but it didn't activate at all. It was like the hour between 9:30 and 10:30 didn't exist, for either of us, or even our devices. The next morning, I asked him, "Do you remember anything from last night after we got into bed?" He was quiet for a bit, and then said, "I remember you saying something like, just a little longer like this." Then nothing. Then it was 10:40. We both agreed it felt like we'd skipped ahead. I joked about aliens. He joked that maybe we'd been cursed by a lazy time god who didn't want to see the F play. But the truth is, it's been gnawing at me. I've never lost time like that before. I'm not on medication, I wasn't drunk, and I wasn't sleep deprived. And both of us experienced it the same way. I even tried checking the security cam footage from our hallway camera. It's motion sensitive and points at the front door. The last detection that night was at 8:45 p.m. when we came in. Nothing else until 6:12 a.m. the next day. Totally blank. I don't know if this sounds as unnerving as it felt, but when your body and brain both lose time, and your partner confirms it, it's hard to explain it away as imagination. Especially when it happens during a moment that's supposed to be physical, emotional, and real. It was like someone cut a scene from our lives. Clean. No memory. No trace. If anyone else has experienced something like this, especially during intimate or emotionally charged moments, I'd love to hear your take. I've lurked long enough to know I'm probably not the only one who's slipped through the cracks of time for a bit. Story 7. This happened a few years ago in high school. My two friends and I were sitting at lunch in the cafeteria and, girls being girls, they went to the bathroom together, telling me to join them after I'd finish eating. For context, the bathroom near our cafeteria that we always hung out in wasn't like the classic school bathrooms and only had one stall. It was once intended for faculty, and the stall isn't walled off by the usual plastic and gap doors, but instead has a whole normal wall and door between the toilet and the room with the sink. Above the sink is a mirror, and the entrance door is in direct view when looking into the mirror. So after I finished, maybe 2 minutes after they left, I went to meet them there. I entered the bathroom and found the stall door locked, them talking in there. I knocked and said that I was here, and one of them told me that they'd open the door in a second. I found it a little weird, but just said okay, and decided I'd wash my hands and freshen up in the mirror in the meantime. They'd chat to me through the door and I'd answer, but the conversation grew sparse. A few minutes passed, and I realized that they had gone completely quiet. I asked if everything was okay, and got no answer. I looked over to the door, and it was unlocked, but closed. At this point I felt a little weird, and like something was off. I asked hello a few times and opened the door. The stall was empty. I stood there, questioning how the hell they could have snuck past me when I was literally standing in the only way out of the stall, seeing the entrance door in the mirror and the stall door in the corner of my eye. I got this sinking feeling in my stomach. Everything felt so wrong. I suddenly realized how strange the entire exchange was, how unlike them it was, that I hadn't even seen them, etc. But it gets worse. When I arrived back at the cafeteria, I saw them leaving, so I came up to them. And they asked me where I had been and why I hadn't joined them. I was completely sound of mind, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. Literally one of the creepiest things that happened to me. Story 8. I had what I can only describe as a glitch in the matrix. I travel for a living, and one of the territories that I've traveled many times, not to mention the fact that I grew up around this particular area, and I'm well acquainted with the roadways and the surrounding towns. So, today I left my home at 10:30 a.m. for a trip that takes me 2 hours and 15 minutes. About halfway through the trip, I started to feel extremely tired, and I was coming up on one of the main towns that I passed through. I thought to myself, I'll just get through this small town, and at the other end are a couple of restaurants where I can stop. I'll get out, go to the bathroom, get something to eat, walk around, and then wake myself up. As I'm sitting there at the top of this hill at this light waiting to turn right, there's some cars ahead of me. The next thing I know, I am looking around singing a song on the radio and trying to figure out where I am. I see a sign. I'm about 10 miles from my destination, which means I missed about 25 miles of my trip, straight through town, under bridges, stoplights, stop signs, curvy roads, hills. 25 miles of my trip is missing, and when I got to the client where I was going, I looked at the clock, and it was 2:30. It took me 4 hours to make a 2-hour and 15-minute trip. I do not know where the time went, nor do I know where the miles went. Story 9. This morning, I took my mother's car to work. My co-worker's having a granddaughter, and I told her she could have my bassinet, and I would bring it to work today. This morning, we unattached the 4 legs from the bassinet and loaded it into my mother's car. I specifically remember thinking, oh, the feet of the legs are a little dirty, but it's not that bad, right after I placed them in the trunk. I called my co-worker when I arrived to work, so we could move the bassinet and legs to her car. She didn't answer, so I locked the car and headed into work. Around lunchtime, she was ready to get the bassinet from my car. I opened the trunk, and the legs are nowhere to be found. I thought maybe I put the legs in my car trunk instead of my mom's. When I got home, the legs are neither in my mother's trunk or my trunk. They're just gone. My head is spinning. I'm just at a loss for words. No one would steal just legs, without the bassinet attachment. And I've looked all around the house for the damn legs just in case. My brain hurts. I feel weird. WTF happened? Story 10. When I was 16, I was sitting alone in my room when I suddenly heard what sounded like a glass object shattering somewhere in the house. It was loud, sharp, sudden, unmistakable. The kind of noise that makes your body jolt. My parents ran upstairs, panicked, asking if I was okay and where it came from. We all searched the house top to bottom, checked every room, every window, every mirror, every light bulb. Nothing was broken. No shards, no cracks, no trace of anything out of place. We even asked the neighbors in the twin house next to us. Our homes were physically connected, and the walls were thin, so sound carried very easily. If they'd heard anything. They looked confused and said they didn't hear a thing. We eventually just gave up, called it weird, and moved on. Every so often it comes up in conversation, and we all say something like, seriously, what was that? But even now, 6 years later, it's still in the back of my mind. I've never found a logical explanation. No glass ever turned up missing or broken. No prank, no critters, no plausible theory. I still wonder if something broke that night, just not in a way that I could see. Story 11. For context, I, 27F, started seeing someone new about a month ago. Let's call him Eric, 30M. We met through a friend, hit it off, and have been texting regularly since. At the time of this story, we'd only been on one official date and had plans for a second later that week. Nothing super serious yet, just a sweet, low-pressure start. I was genuinely excited to get to know him more. One Monday evening, I was home after work, sitting on my couch scrolling through my phone, when I saw I had a new text notification from Eric. The preview said, I missed the way you smiled this morning after we kissed. I stopped cold. That's not something that should exist. We hadn't kissed yet. We hadn't seen each other that day. In fact, we hadn't seen each other since our first date, which was a week and a half earlier. We were texting about maybe grabbing coffee on Thursday, but that was it. I opened the message. It was real. Same words. Same timestamp, 6:04 a.m. that day. I hadn't even been awake at that time. And I definitely hadn't seen Eric that morning. I stared at the screen for a while, trying to make sense of it. Was he texting someone else and accidentally sent it to me? But we'd never even kissed, so why would he think that would make sense to write to anyone? And if it was meant for me, then how? I remembered reading once about people accidentally texting the wrong person, but this felt different. So I replied, trying to stay chill. Hey, I think you might have sent this to the wrong person. A minute passed. Then I saw the typing dots. He sent back. Wait, I just sent that now. I checked again. The timestamp was still 6:04 a.m. I screenshotted it and sent it back to him. He immediately called me. He sounded genuinely confused. Said he'd been in meetings all day and hadn't texted me at all since the night before. He checked his phone, and the message wasn't in his sent folder. But it was on my phone, plain as day, sitting in our thread right between 2 casual messages from the night before. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. I was going to text you something like that this morning, actually. I had a dream that we kissed, and when I woke up, it felt real. I was going to type it out, but figured it might be too soon. I didn't know what to say. I looked again at the message. Same language. Same emotion. But written hours before we spoke. It was like I'd received a message he almost sent, but hadn't. At first, we both kind of laughed it off. Okay, I guess we're psychic now, stuff like that. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going on. It felt like I'd received a message from a version of him that existed just slightly ahead in time. Like I'd gotten a preview of something that was supposed to happen, but hadn't yet. And here's where it gets even weirder. We had our second date 3 days later. We went for that coffee, then took a walk around the park. It was nice, comfortable. As we were saying goodbye, he leaned in and kissed me, soft, not too much, but enough to make me smile. I looked up at him afterward and he said, That smile. I knew it would look like that. I didn't tell him right then, but it was exactly the moment described in the text I had gotten 3 days earlier. That night, I scrolled back through our conversation, and the strange message was gone. Just gone. No record of it. The screenshot I took, still in my phone. But the original message in the text thread, completely vanished. I checked the timestamp on the screenshot again. Still says 6:04 a.m. Monday. Still exactly as I remembered it. But now it's like I imagined it, except I have the proof that I didn't. Eric and I are still talking. We've gone on a few more dates since, and things feel good, normal even. But I haven't brought up the disappearing message again. I don't know if I want to. It feels like something I wasn't supposed to see. Like I got a glimpse of a moment out of order. Story 12. A few years ago, when my daughter was 3, I decided to go back to school and become a nurse. My husband and I were in no way trying for a baby whatsoever. I was on birth control, and we were very careful. I walk into her preschool one day to find the director and her teachers telling me congratulations with big smiles on their faces. I used to work as a preschool teacher here, so a lot of these people were close friends of mine. I ask them what they're congratulating me for, and they tell me that my daughter announced to everyone that Mommy has a little sister in her tummy. I laughed it off and told them all I was sorry to disappoint them, but that just wasn't true. My daughter and I went home and talked about it. I told her Mommy didn't have a baby in her tummy, and she just kept pointing at my belly and saying, "Yes, you do," as if I were lying to her. A few days later, I wake up to someone touching my belly. My daughter has the bottom of my shirt pulled up with her head resting on my belly while she rubs it gently and says, "Baby sister, what are you doing hiding in there?" It was really sweet, and I just assumed she really wanted a little sister. She had never expressed any interest in having a sibling prior to this, and we never discussed it. We had the talk again, and she got upset with me and told me she has seen her before, and she is in there. She told me that her sister looks different than us and has blonde hair and blue eyes with little holes in her cheeks, aka dimples. My daughter, husband, and I all have very dark hair, chocolate brown eyes, and no dimples. I talk to her about wanting a sibling and tell her that when I finish school, we will try to give her a little brother or sister. Again, she's frustrated and yelling, "I already have a sister." I was expecting my period to start within the next week like clockwork. It didn't. I took a pregnancy test and just stared at that faint positive result for what felt like forever. I was completely in shock. I was on birth control, so immediately called my OBGYN, and they saw me the next day. It was estimated that I was 4 weeks and 6 days pregnant. I gave birth to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl with the sweetest dimples. This experience has always blown my mind. Story 13. We were all completely sober. Quick preface. I'm currently driving home from my lunch break, so I'm using Siri to talk. Hopefully this makes sense. So back in the summer, we had a huge friend trip to Lake Powell. For anyone that has been there, you know it's absolutely beautiful. Anyways, we were boating through the canyons and going deeper and deeper into the canyons Lake Powell. At one point I thought in my mind something along the lines of, "Damn, this place is so beautiful it almost looks fake, or like it was designed to look this way by something." When I started saying that in my mind, a friend turned around to me and said, "Dude, it feels like we're in a movie and we are looking at movie props. It looks so fake." And I turned around and looked and then said, "Dude, what the fuck did you just say?" I was thinking the exact same thing. We were both freaking out about it, but then it got a little freakier. We were sitting at the back of the boat looking at our 10 or so friends standing up while the boat was slowly going through the canyons, and as I watched them looking at the scenery, I experienced an altered state of conscience. The best way to describe it is the facade of the human experience was dropped, and all of a sudden my friends looked like gods or angelic beings experiencing Earth and just enjoying the moment. My friend turned to me and said, "Dude, look at our friends. They're so beautiful and alive. They look like angels." And I knew at that moment we were both experiencing the same thing. The best way to describe what we saw is it looked like we placed ourselves in a video game and were enjoying what we created. It's super hard to describe this experience. If you've seen Maze Runner, you know how they make you forget everything before you go into the maze, but yet you had an existence before? It felt like that. That nature of reality teased us and slightly withdrew, and we saw our friends and this earth for what it could truly be for a brief moment in time. Story 14. It starts back when I was in college, around 2015. I was 21, in my junior year, and spent a semester studying abroad in London. It was a wild, beautiful, chaotic time. I met tons of people, partied too much, and made a lot of memories I treasure, and a few that are fuzzier. One of those memories was a night I spent with a guy named Theo. He was a friend of a friend, British, funny, a little intense. We'd met a few times in group settings. One night, after a long evening out with mutual friends, we ended up walking home together. It was drizzling, and we were both a little drunk. We talked the whole way. I remember him offering me his jacket, and how his hand brushed mine at the crosswalk. I remember how quiet the city felt for once. We made it back to my flat. I invited him in. I don't need to go into detail. We kissed, we stayed up talking, we fell asleep in the same bed. It wasn't dramatic or passionate, just soft and fleeting. We were two people who connected for a moment, and then let it pass. The next morning, we shared coffee, then he left. I didn't expect to see him again, and I didn't. I finished the semester, went back to the US, and moved on. I never forgot him exactly, but I also didn't think about him much. Fast forward to 2022. I was attending a small conference in Chicago for work. During one of the networking lunches, I recognized someone across the room. It took me a second to place him. He'd grown a beard, and his hair was shorter. But it was definitely Theo. I walked over, said his name, and he looked stunned. Like I'd hit him with cold water. He immediately said, "No way. This is wild." We hugged, and I joked, "Didn't expect to see you again after that one night in London." He blinked. "Wait, what night?" I thought he was teasing. "Come on." 2015. We walked back from that club near Tottenham Court Road. You stayed over at my flat. You even gave me your jacket. He looked genuinely confused. "I think you've got the timeline mixed up." Then he said the sentence that still makes my skin crawl. "We hooked up in 2019. In New York. Remember? You were at that tech mixer. We went back to your Airbnb." I shook my head. "Theo, I wasn't in New York in 2019. I hadn't even been back there since 2016. He laughed at first, like maybe I was messing with him. Then he got quiet. I remember that night clearly. You were wearing a green dress. We talked about your job at the nonprofit. You told me you were thinking of moving to Chicago. Read it, I did work at a nonprofit. I did talk about moving to Chicago around that time. And I do own a green dress like the one he described. But I never went to that mixer. I never saw Theo again after London. I would swear my life on it. I told him all of that. He just stared at me like trying to line up a jigsaw puzzle that wouldn't fit. "So, you're telling me we've had this exact memory, but in different years? Different cities?" I nodded. "And as far as I know, we only ever spent that one night in 2015. He rubbed his face and said, half joking, "I feel like I'm in the wrong version of the story." We ended up getting coffee later that day, trying to piece it together. He even pulled up an old photo on his phone. Us, together, at what looked like a rooftop bar. I was wearing a green dress. The skyline behind us was New York. I looked happy, but I have no memory of it. None. I asked him to send me the photo. I still have it. It's me, no doubt. Same face, same smile. But I don't remember that night. I don't remember that bar. I don't remember being with him in 2019. It's like someone dropped a memory into his timeline that doesn't exist in mine. We joked about alternate timelines, but the more we talked, the less funny it felt. There were too many overlaps. Things he remembered me saying in 2019 that I had said, but years earlier. Things I remembered from London that he swore never happened. After the conference, we parted ways. We exchanged emails, but we haven't talked much since. I think we both walked away from that encounter more confused than anything. It's like we each had one version of the same story, but they don't line up. I don't have a clean explanation. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe he is. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels like we both remember something that shouldn't be possible. 2 nights. 2 cities. For years apart. Same people. Same connection. Different timelines. And somehow, we both think our version is the real one.